The Supreme Court of the United States issued an order in the Title 42 case. Part of the discussion here is what actually Title 42 is. But I want to tell you that the order itself, let me give you the kind of the thumbnail version of it first. What the order does is this. In number one, it grants the petition for certiorari. So that means the Supreme Court is hearing the case. So the stay stays in place. In other words, there will be no expiring of Title 42, which is the executive orders on immigration relating to COVID. So we're going to get into that in a little bit because it's all very connected here. And I really need to explain this to people. Number two, it says it will be expedited. The review is going to be expedited. So they're going to actually hear oral arguments in February. And then the analysis is going to end up at, I think this is what you're going to see, is whether the states could intervene or not. That's the only issue the court is looking like they're going to address at this point. So that's the nature of it. But I think the starting point has to be, what is this all about?
It kind of happened during sort of the COVID haze everyone was under, all the different laws and things that were changing going forward. People see Title 42 and they just think immigration.
A series of executive orders that were put in place when the COVID pandemic first broke, Professor Hutchinson. That was the initial response to control migration into the United States from unlawful entrants who could be communicating and spreading the disease.
It was designed to slow the spread of a rapidly spreading virus, and a poorly understood virus, at least at the time. And so Title 42 allowed the administration, that was the Trump administration, to expel illegals based on health care grounds. Title 42 has continued in force for the first couple of years of the Biden administration, and now the Biden administration seeks to end Title 42, and that may open the floodgates.
What the government said in their brief, saying we want the Title 42 to expire, was we want it to expire, but don't have it expire during Christmas because we're not prepared to handle it. Right. In one sense, I think what the Supreme Court did here was give the federal government time to figure out what to do. We've got a crisis on that border. And the way this came down, by the way, 5 justices are in favor of hearing the case. There are 4 justices that do not think the case should be heard. So when you're going into this, it's 5-4 right now. And that the 4 justices that don't want to hear it are, ready for this? Sotomayor and Kagan, not shocking.
No.
Gorsuch and Jackson. And Justice Jackson signed on to Justice Gorsuch's opinion. I think people are looking at Title 42 as the end-all, be-all, and it's just not.
Does this just punt the ball, essentially? Just keep it going, just keeping the policy going as we still try to figure out what to do?
I think that, you know what? I think that's what they've done here. What the Supreme Court has said here is we are going to leave 42 in place right now. We are going to hear the case on an expedited basis, but the question is limited to, and I think this is important to point out, it says the question, the court's review is limited to the question of intervention.
The question of intervention, if you will, is really, I think, a question of standing with respect to federal policy that is enforceable by the federal government. And I believe that each administration has the right to set its own policy with respect to the enforcement of the law. But here, I think the states are saying the federal government is really not doing its job. We need to be allowed to come in and to defend a policy that the existing administration wishes to invalidate.
Congress and the president have to get some action here. Now, they probably bought themselves. Harry, you and I were just talking about this during the break. The president's saying we'll have a decision in June. I think we'll probably have a decision in March or April. But okay, March, April, June.
By the end of the term is what you're saying.
End of the term, you're going to give us a chance to figure this out. We have to do something. Border security is a disaster.
Yes, this was a temporary fix, but we're very concerned that if you remove this temporary fix, you're going to make the situation worse. And we can't make it any worse without literally creating a national security crisis. I think we could argue that right now it is a national security crisis because we've seen reports of it's not just Mexicans or people from the Americas trying to come up for a better way of life economically. It's now literally a worldwide phenomenon that you can fly into Mexico City and go up into the border. We've seen people from the Middle East. We've seen people from Moldova. and this is just within the last 24 hours. It's a real national security crisis, and so we don't want to change anything. And so this temporary fix about COVID, I think people are just saying, look, until we get a better policy, let's not make it worse.
I think the failure of the Biden administration here, which is so evident, is when you stop the construction of the border wall and border security, when you stop that, you stopped an orderly process as well. There's a consequence to not following through with the security fence, and that was when you had a security fence, you would have an orderly migration system. When you don't have a security fence, the whole world thinks Title 42 means if it goes, everybody can come in. That's the perception.